Hi, my name is Geoff Weiss. I will be talking about using LibreOffice to import and/or export file contents to/from the Apple II. And this is my presentation for this year. So normally what I have done in the past, i.e. at K-Fest, is to do a presentation and then announce some stuff. So I'm doing the opposite this year. I'll announce some new software that's available, and then we'll talk all about it. So I'm announcing that available now, and the URL will be on the next slide. Will be a LibreOffice extension to import and export AppleSoft Basic files and an AppleWorks GS text importer. Well, AppleWorks GS word processor uh, importer, at least the body of the text. So we have URLs right here where it can be downloaded immediately. The software is written with LibreOffice Basic, so it will be compatible with, we'll say, any modern version of LibreOffice. Only tested with LibreOffice 26.2, but so I don't know how much older it will go. But at least from 26.2 and onwards. So the question, yes,
For those of us who are not familiar and don't use LibreOffice every
yes,
day, could you explain what this LibreOffice that you speak of?
sure. LibreOffice is an open source desktop suite of software, word processor, spreadsheet database, similar to a Microsoft Office. And the quote unquote selling point of LibreOffice, it is, or the developers say that they are Microsoft compatible, more or less.
So free as in
Open source free and
Yeah.
no cost free. But we'll use the free as freedom to use. If you want to use what the open source community will prefer the use, hence Libra um, in that sense. Thank you for asking that question. So, right, so we have two different extensions, one for the AppleSoft Basic, one for the AppleWorks GS word processor. So I'll briefly talk about how to get it installed, and then we'll do a demo of seeing in use. So you open up LibreOffice. LibreOffice can be downloaded for your modern computer platform. You'll select the tools menu, choose extensions menu item, click add, navigate to the Office extension file that you downloaded, click open. There will be a license terms as a CBBL, so accept the license. Close the extension window, then it will prompt you to restart LibreOffice, and I'll recommend to do each one at a time. It'll probably work if you do both at the same time, but if just in case, do one at a time, and um, then you'll bring up a new writer window. You'll see a floating toolbar for each of the extensions, and then there'll be the triangle, uh, which will give you a menu option, and then you'll say dock toolbar, and then at that point, the it'll I'll argue that point is everything's ready for use. So the extensions will be available through a menu item, and with a toolbar icon. We have examples here of what an import and export will look like. Import will be a LibreOffice document designed similar to the 2GS Finder icon. And an export is a Apple II monitor with a, if you squint hard enough, a 2GS Finder icon. So let's go ahead and do a live demo here. So we're going to first start up a version of LibreOffice that's not the one that I'm running. this is going to be interesting to turn around and watch this. So I'm going to install extensions. So we go to Tools, Extensions, Add. I'm probably not talking well on the microphone right now. So we go to Downloads. So do Basic, Open, accept the license. It'll take a few moments to install. And then we'll close the window, say restart. Good, goes to the right screen. Do the second one. Oops. Extensions. Add. Basic. No, word processor. Accept. Close. Start. So we have a writer window. And so we have two floating toolbars. So we're going to dock this one. Dock this one. So now we have at the end of the toolbar icons for the new routines. And under the tools menu, there is an add-ons where you can also do a menu item to import and export as relevant. So let's go ahead and import a basic program. So I found on GitHub, a person wrote a snake basic program, and I chose that because it's relatively long. And yep, it's imported. And then we can go ahead and export that. And I'm going to overwrite snake 2. And I've been labeling things AP BAS for an Applesoft Basic. I have the file dialog box look for AP BAS file extensions, FP BAS floating point basic, and just BAS. Little hesitant about how useful BAS is because that could imply other basics or other type of files. So let's go ahead and save that. And then let's go ahead and open it just to see what it looks like. Oops, not have to import it. I have to remember the right order of operation here. And sometimes new documents will hide behind the one you're currently working on. And I have not figured out how to get around that. So let's select the new one. And basically it's the same thing. And then one can take this, copy it over to an Apple II through on an emulator, on a real computer, and the resulting file is the Applesoft Basic file that you can then run. All right. So going to the word processor. Let me go ahead and close some of these. So let's go ahead and import a word processor document. The sample that I've been using is what was it called again? We'll open it. We'll see what the manual was for it. Yep, got hidden behind the window. Right, Tonight Sky. So this will import the Tonight Sky's AppleWorks GS version of the manual. And you can sort of see here that the font that AppleWorks used was Venice, but Venice is at least not on my computer and is not on most modern OSs. The font here is New York, so it would try to choose the font. Uh, the desktop management equivalent font manager will choose an alternate font if the chosen font doesn't exist. But we can see here that underlines, bold faces got imported over. Tab characters got imported over. Those underline and boldface together. So it's going to import font changes, style changes, paragraph into paragraphs, very, very basic tabs. And it will also convert any of the high bit characters into the UTF-8 equivalent. Yes.
Geoff, does it just do the text, or are there like embedded graphics in GS files?
So the AppleWorks word processor, AppleWorks GS word processor, does not have any embedded graphics. Okay. This importer does have a few limitations. The limitations is pretty much what you see here. Well, those everything that I just explained is what it will import. It will not handle color changes of text. It will not handle page breaks. It will not actually set rulers or the tab stops in rulers. It's just there's a lot of extra code needed to handle all of that. And considering that I started this about 2 weeks ago, let's just say that I'm actually pretty impressed how far I got just in this time alone. Asterisk, I did ask some AI systems, some LL systems, hey, write this code for me. The code is not anywhere close of actually, one being right or working. But I did use some of the structure to write to produce this, and then spent a lot of time actually, making it actually work right and debugging things and whatnot. So make sure there's a full disclosure with that. So it's the basic text. What would be a use case for this? Let's say you are an editor of an international Apple II magazine and you wanted to accept, gee, Ken, I noticed that expression. Want to accept submissions as an AppleWorks GS document? Well, now you get the full text. If you want AppleSoft Basic programs, well, now you have it formatted correctly for as if it was from an Apple II. Any questions about any of this so far? Yes, Mike. Charles. Right. Sorry. Yes.
How well does it go the other way?
That's a very, very good question. So the reason why I started this was I wanted to see LibreOffice be an AppleWorks GS word processor exporter, and I started working. I first had this idea when OpenOffice 3.0 got released, when 3.0 included support for LibreOffice Basic, and there was examples of importers and exporters at the time. I didn't even begin, trying to write code at the time because it became very clear that you needed to work with Uno, and it wasn't just Basic by itself just wouldn't work. So flash forward to the pandemic when a lot of us were forced to work at home, and I said, well, let me, spend some time in trying to understand this and try to work on it. So I spent a week writing some code for an exporter, and I got very frustrated that that I thought there was no structs format. There was no way of doing alternate data types. Turned out I was wrong in both cases, just because I wasn't familiar with LibreOffice Basic as a whole. And by using an LL system to help it helped me understand some of the features that the language supported and that I was not aware of prior to that. But to make it, but I brought all this because my idea was I wanted to see a word processor exporter, and then finally sat down with the file tool notes and realized that the structure for the word processor makes lots of assumptions of how QuickDraw renders fonts in on the GGS. And one will have to basically have an entire QuickDraw and Font Manager renderer in LibreOffice to map out all of these structs out correctly. And I have zero desire to do that. So it's hey, you have an entire 2GS toolbox basically in LibreOffice by the time you're done with that. No, that's way out of the scope for most mere mortals. Unfortunately, an exporter will not be on the cards, at least by me. If someone else wants to do it, please, I would love to see that. But also, saying up front where the challenges are going to be. So, I do have ideas of other types of Apple II types for exporting. Nothing I want to talk about now because maybe it'll show up at a future conference. But yeah, I have other ideas, and I have started code for some other things as well. Yes, that was the second question. Yes.
Yeah, so about basic importing.
Yes.
At what point, like the big challenge with that is text versus tokenized.
Yes.
In your demonstration, was the file that was on your disk tokenized, or was it?
Oh yeah, it was a. Oh, if you want me to prove that, no, it was tokenized. I did the complete tokenized. The importer takes the tokenized, makes it a text, and the exporter takes the text and makes it tokenized.
Gotcha. Okay, so and that is that specific to GS that the tokens change?
No, the tokens are identical from the Apple II Plus all the way to the 2GS and 2C Plus. Integer basic, Integer basic is the different file format. Right. Correct. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yep. Was there another question? Any other questions so far? All right. Yeah. So I love that question. Thank you for asking that. So, my code does not do any syntax checking. My code will basically, it's not 100% compatible, but very, very similar as if you just typed in code through the basic command line. So it's not actually running the code, but it will say, oh, if you want to type HER:, HER2 space HColor equals, well, it will accept it. It doesn't do the syntax checking until you run it. But yeah, this will do the same thing as checking, oh, these are the token words, it'll convert to tokens, put in the memory in the right way. But then you won't know it's a problem until you run it. So yeah, my code should be, it's not 100% identical to what the interpreter does, but it's not the interpreter, but the part. It's not really the parser at that point, but it's the shell part of it. But it's very, very close. The one thing that I do, that at least I know I do differently, is if there are leading spaces within a rem statement, it will truncate all of those out. Otherwise, all the other characters should pass through the same way between if you're typing the program on an Apple II or using this. But it should be very, very, it's very close. And my sample code that I use just happened to have spaces in the rem statements, which is why I'm wondering, why did my import export suddenly have different sizes and the checksum changed? It's like, okay, didn't want to use that as my example file. But yes, so now we can use LibreOffice Basic to Manage Applesoft Basic. Yes.
I installed the extension. Can you show me again what to do next to open the basic file?
Sure. Right. Yes. So, to open up a writer document, so go to LibreOffice, bring up a new writer document, and then you'll see the floating windows that will show the toolbars. And then from there, I would dock the toolbars, and or you can just use tools. Oops, sorry, I have to use this window. Go to tools, add-ons, and then you can do basic import, basic export if you have the basic one.
Thank you.
And I'll be around, today and tomorrow if anybody wants to experiment or have questions about this. All right, so that was the live demo. Let me get that away. Go back to the slideshow. See if I can start at the right slide.
OpenIDN, is that Solaris?
It's Solaris derivative, yes. So it's the continuation of what Open Solaris used to be, using the Illumos kernel. All right. So so now we'll talk about for those who are interested in developing extensions to add more stuff with Apple II types than what I have done. So there are several languages that LibreOffice will support that will support cross-platform use. Python, Java, LibreOffice Basic, and Bean Shell. LibreOffice also will allow C++ development for extensions, but those will be both architecture and platform specific. So that reduces cross-platform compatibility. Architecture meaning, is it ARM versus x86? Is it 64-bit versus 32-bit, etc. So every architecture would need its own version of software. So all the extensions I wrote are in LibreOffice Basic. The .oxt file is just a regular zip file. If you want to unzip it, you can look at the contents. I have dialogues, dialog boxes. I have LibreOffice Basic code in there, plus all the metadata to make LibreOffice, accept it as an extension. And I'm the type of programmer that likes to look at existing code when writing code, versus just read the manual and say, "Oh, I understand this language now." So if anybody's interested, please look at the code that I have. It's there for for people to look at, and it's a good basis for making new extensions. And we'll talk, and then we're going to talk about some of the key portions of the code that is relevant to bring up. And all my examples are going to be in LibreOffice Basic. But the examples I'm going to give will be relevant for other languages since they touch on what's called the UNO capability of LibreOffice, the API to handle the I/O. That's what LibreOffice does, internally as well. But this is how you get extensions to get data in and out of LibreOffice. But before I go there, bring up a couple of useful links here. I have the links for the documentation within LibreOffice for how to work with text documents, because most likely the stuff that people want to import and export are text documents. Sure, I guess could be spreadsheets and other things, but if we start with that, then you can find the links for the other types, graphic types and the spreadsheet types, and that LibreOffice will also support. The documentation for LibreOffice Basic, where you can see all the commands and operators rather, the data types, etc., that it will support. And then I have a link to file type notes for those who want to look at the actual file type notes and figure out how to import export. So the parts where I got stuck when I looked at this back in 2009 2010 era was all the Uno stuff, and so these are the areas that I'm just going to highlight as what the part that I found challenging at the time, and just highlight that this is these are the parts that are going to be relevant for uh, that's needed for these type of extensions. So when creating a new writer document, and this is for the import functionality, I have code segments. I don't have the complete code. Within LibreOffice Basic, you're going to have to first define every variable type. So I'm skipping all of that. My code examples here is based upon the code that I've written. So if you look at my code, you can sort of see where the missing bits are if you just want to copy and paste. So basically, you say URL is a S writer. Then the next couple lines is to create a blank document, and then and I used the example here, the library named foo, but that's the name of the macro. This is all good. I've been using the term extension up to this point, but the extension uses LibreOffice macros for if you're using LibreOffice Basic. So you just use the macro name here where I put in foo. But in the rest of my examples, I'm going to use the basic macro name just because it gets more confusing trying to keep renaming things along the way. So when doing a import or export and you expect the operation to be long, the typical user experience that people expect is to see some type of progress bar. Well, I realized at some point that progress bars, trying to write that code was going to be tedious and time consuming, and I didn't have the time to handle that. So I figured just throw a dialog box and just say working, or it'll say importing or exporting. So I'm just gonna throw a little small window on the screen that says, we're going to do some working, and just be patient. So this is the code to to put up a dialog box. The missing piece here, and what I mean by missing, is I didn't explain how to create a dialog box. That's explained within the LibreOffice Basic documentation, or you can contact me for for help with that, and I can certainly help. But yes, you want to create a dialog, then you just use that existing dialog, and this is the code to go ahead and display it. When choosing a file picker, this is the file picker code for is it save? Open. Right, this is for the open, right, for importing. So the cool thing here is, and I didn't point this out during the demo, is you can choose what filter to use for the list of files. So the default filter was show the AppleSoft, what I was using as the file name extensions for AppleSoft files. But if you didn't change the file name to one of these three extension names, you could select all files, and then it would show the list of all the files. So here's example code that says this is how you can create an open dialog box and how to associate multiple filters. This shows the code of how to create a so once you have the new writer window created, then if you just want just plain text, no formatting, this is some code to just say, go ahead and just default to the main things is set the default for to reset formatting, and I said use a generic font name called Mono, which should be compatible across all platforms to have some type of monospace font. When adding text into the writer document, we got we've got 2 lines here. One is insert string, where the cursor is an object, line text is a string. Then you pass the Boolean false. And then the second line is if you just want to add a character return, or the term is you do a paragraph break, which is how which is internally how LibreOffice handles things. Um, you have the 2 lines for you insert string and or the insert the paragraph break. For the code for this is code for during the export process. When you want to look at, so within LibreOffice, every line is a paragraph. So this code here will go through and enumerate every paragraph, and then you can go through a while loop and then look at every, take the paragraph, put it to a string, and then you can, what this code does is builds an array of strings for every line, and then from there you can work on the array to do whatever you have to do to convert stuff for writing into an exported file. Any questions about this so far? I'm sort of just breezing along and just sharing a little bit of some of the code segments that I have here. When writing 8-bit binary content, I started running out of screen space, so I changed the text color here, and it got a little crowded. But what I did was I used the LibreOffice basic command for open and close to to go through and check to see if the file exists. If so, it will take care of saying, do you want to overwrite the file? If I didn't use the LibreOffice basic command, so let me back up. So I'm using 2 different methods to access files. One, I'm using the LibreOffice basic command to open and then immediately close a file without writing any content in it. And all this will do is, it checks to see if the file exists, and it'll prompt you to overwrite. But then I'm using the Uno IO stream, or the output stream service, to actually write the contents to the file. And I found out through trial and error that if I use the method with open and use the get or put or print to write to the file, it actually tries to write with UTF-8 characters and not with the 8-bit characters that I'm putting into my strings. And that corrupts all of your high-bit bytes. So the workaround is don't do that. You have to use the output stream. So I still like the idea of letting basic handle, overwriting files. And then I switch to output stream to then open the file again and force the text encoding to ISO 8859-1, which through trial and error, I found that was the only one that seemed to work correctly to ensure 8-bit binary and not trying to convert it into other type of encoded formats, i.e. adding extra bytes for high-bit characters, or dropping high-bit characters in some cases as well. Ironically, when I even chose Mac Roman, it didn't do things correctly. So I chose that, and I was getting clean 8-bit binary. So some basic code here for writing, and this assumes that you have one giant string for writing the output. Yeah, that's what the assumption here. And how long is a string in LibreOffice Basic? It's 2 to the 32 bytes. Let's just say a string is longer than an Apple II has memory. So you don't have to worry about it. Or even size of disks. Don't have to worry about that. So any additional questions?
Believe it or not, Geoff, we're the first talk to have questions from the internet.
Ooh, thank you. Yes. Hello, Internet.
You got two questions. Any chance it will roll into the LibreOffice base at some point?
I am not planning to submit this to LibreOffice. If someone else wants to, go ahead and open up a Bugzilla ticket. Um, I suspect it will probably not be accepted due to a niche audience.
Boo.
But if someone else wants to, I have no problems, sharing any additional code to make it happen.
And number two question was, do you have any interesting stories about weird aspects of the file formats being implemented that were interesting?
And to clarify, of the file formats that I'm working on, or other type of file formats that I have ideas or other things.
It appears to be, are there any weird aspects of the file formats
Okay.
that, like, I think what they're trying to say is, in the process of this project,
Right.
did you have to do something weird?
Sure. Yeah. So Applesoft, no, that's it's pretty straightforward. I talked about the spaces issues with the rem statements, and I was a little, but you would have the same issue if you were typing in the command line as well. So that's not really adding any additional challenges per se. Applesoft, I would argue, it was pretty straightforward. I don't remember anything specifically of any file format weirdnesses or any interesting stories per se about that. Now, AppleWorks, on the other hand, AppleWorks JS word processor, uh, the I talked about the export, how that is going to be very challenging. I don't want to say problematic, very challenging. For the import, the as I mentioned, the LLM assistance was completely useless. Even when I said, use this file type node, it was still completely useless. So I went in and basically I went through the tool notes and went through each section, and then I had to figure out what did the person who wrote the tool note, what did they actually mean when they said do this, do this? The wording, I probably would have worded things a little bit differently in the tool notes. It was a little confusing. It was right, but confusing. So some of the things I was hoping to do was, like, for example, add a page breaks, and this is where it's I would love to say it's. I'm a little confused how to do that, or slash how to do that correctly without trial and error. There's a paragraph number and a save array number, and I'm not certain. Looking at how Apple works, looking at the actual raw contents, that format is very weird. I'm not. I'm also looking at this from 2026, and I'm looking at how LibreOffice does things. I'm very surprised how AppleWorks JS has some commonalities to what LibreOffice does. For example, like everything gets separated as paragraphs. So there was some commonalities with that. But when it's very clear that if for those who had used AppleSoft or AppleWorks JS word processor, for any major papers in school or whatnot, you notice that it got slow after a while, even on an accelerator. And yeah, every time you add a paragraph, it adds it to the bottom. Even if you insert a paragraph, in the front, it adds it to the bottom, and then it has to sort things through the paragraph numbers and save arrays, and it's gets in order to try to reprocess the file, it gets very confusing. And I would have suspected that, no, wouldn't you, again, hindsight's 2020. Well, wouldn't you use some type of B tree or something, and just, or even a linked list, and just keep things sorted, in memory all the time? But I could sort of see how that was inefficient, especially on a 2.8 megahertz system. So I guess they did things, at least, try to, as as long as your files weren't too big, somewhat smart. But yeah, those AppleWorks GS word processor data files get very ziggy zaggy very quickly. So yeah, that's really surprised me, and that's going to add a challenge. And because of that, that will add challenges to add page breaks. It will add challenges to add rulers for every paragraph. The tab stops will be based on rulers, and so yeah, once I realized how much ziggy zaggy, using that term, I realized, yeah, I didn't want to, if I wanted to have something ready today, there was no way I could, spend time working on that code out. That's, a lot. It looks like lots of time. And it doesn't look like an LLM system will be able to figure that out either. So that's going to be require a human, and maybe that explains why there haven't been that many AppleWorks GS word processor importers with other software. Yes.
Maybe you need to make an optimizer first for Node.js.
Oh, it's that.
Fix it.
That's it's. You might as well just, to write an optimizer, you're going to still have to, you have to go through the zigzag anyway. So it doesn't really matter to, yeah, just use the format as is. Fix it. I'm sorry.
It'd be faster, right? On the GS later.
Yeah, it's okay. No, you're right about that. That could optimize for on the GS. Maybe, I don't know. It doesn't look like it's used linked list. It looks like it's just, it just keeps adding data blocks at the end. And so it just, does it have to like walk through the entire tree at times? I don't quite know what it's doing. Well, I should say that I have some suspects of how it might operate, but not 100% certain. There was some portions of the AppleWorks GS source code on GitHub for a little while. It's no longer there, and it wasn't complete. So I have no idea if that would be of any help with this. But yes, that was sort of a very tangenty comment to the question. Any other questions? Yes.
Having to import and export each time you want to deal with this is a little bit funky. It looks like LibreOffice has a way to be an interactive extension, and it will know the original file name, and you could add a hook to file save as, and it will just run your exporter back to the original file.
I have not seen any examples of how to do that. So if examples exist, I would love to implement it. So yes, and I forgot to mention that I can be found on the Apple II RRC for support for this. So any other questions? Thank you for all the great questions. Yes.